Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the New Jersey Wedding Podcast. We are your hosts, Celia Milton and Andrea Pertel. And today we're diving into a topic that it might not be the most glamorous part of the big day, but it is one of the most important: wedding insurance. Weather can be unpredictable, vendors can close, towns require liability coverage for beach and park ceremonies, especially at the shore. Protecting your investment is more essential than ever before, which is why we're so excited to welcome David Anthony Ferrao. I knew I
There
was
you
going to mess it
go.
up.
No, you got it.
He's a liability
Hooray.
protection specialist. This is a way of saying he is a very diverse insurance agent, and he works with Gyumolcs Insurance based in Brielle, New Jersey. He handles all kinds of things, but what we're especially interested in is helping brides, grooms, and everyone in between move from feeling vulnerable and unprotected to being totally covered with peace of mind and not worrying about this aspect of your day. Through education and guidance, he can navigate the couples through that often overlooked world of wedding insurance.
Mm,
Clarity, protection, confidence, without confusion. I think people kind of avoid this because they just don't know what to do first. But
absolutely.
sometimes the first thing is that ring. And our friends at Bride Lawyer told us that 80% of the people that they see in their practice, 80% of the couples do not have that ring insured, which gives me a little bit of like the hives, to tell you the truth.
It gives me anxiety,
Yeah,
honestly.
it
And
does.
I have anxiety for them.
It's not even my ring, and I'm worried about it. So,
Exactly.
tell us what you do and how people should work with you. What's the way to do this that doesn't make them crazy?
Absolutely. So, first off, thank you for the introduction. I am very grateful for being on here. You guys seem to have a fantastic audience, and everybody that I talk to about your podcast has glaring reviews. So, I'm definitely
Cool.
excited to be part of this thing.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you for joining us.
Of course, absolutely. But basically, the way that I kind of start things off is it's just a conversation, right? Like you said, a lot of people don't really have an understanding of what it is. So 99% of my job is educating, right?
Mm.
Having these brides and grooms understand the intricacies of it. Um, and just giving them like that peace of mind, like you said, because everybody understands home insurance and auto insurance,
Mm.
or at least at a basic level they understand what it is.
Yeah.
um but they understand that it's necessary because one, it's required, but two, they also understand that they buy a house for $500,000, and if anything happens to that thing, who's going to pay for it? Or if they get
Right.
into a car accident, who's going to pay for it? So they understand that. But when it comes to wedding insurance, I feel like it's so much more necessary because there's
Yeah.
so many more moving parts. There's
Right.
so many more things that could potentially go wrong. As opposed to
Exactly.
having one expense, you have 10, 15 different, movements of money to different
Yes.
and the liability is very high, not only from that perspective, but also from the perspective of, there's so many people. You have, 50 to sometimes north of 200 people that are coming to an event. There's liquor involved, there's all kinds of stuff. Anything can go wrong. And the
Right.
likelihood of it happening is actually a lot higher than most people expect. Um, so it's about just protecting the bride and groom from the worst case scenario, because my job is all about being proactive as opposed to reactive. It really
Mm.
knots up my stomach
Mm.
when somebody I speak to is like, "Oh no, I really don't need that," and I try to advise them otherwise, and then I get a call from them, 3, 4 months down the road, and they're like, "Oh my God, this happened. Is there anything?" I'm like, "Listen, I'm sorry. Like, you
Yeah.
denied. I have that in writing. Like, I wish I could help you, but like, so I try to avoid that as much as possible, and that's honestly what I try to aim for when I'm doing my job, especially when it comes to the wedding insurance side, is avoiding that conversation when things do go wrong. So,
You
but
know,
yeah, that's
through
I guess the long way of explaining
you
it.
you mentioned, when you buy a house and all the other big reasons that people need insurance. But when you think of it, a wedding and the cost of weddings, it really is an investment, your
Yes.
Yes.
wedding. And it is, in a lot of cases, one of the couple's first really big expenses together as
Mhm.
a couple.
Mhm.
So this investment you have to protect. You don't want to start your life out with problems, or
Hmm.
um, and you want to protect this investment, this day.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's so many, like I said, there's so many little things that could go wrong, right?
Yeah,
Like the main focus of it is cancellation or postponement, right? That
right,
Right.
covers the entirety of the wedding. Like a lot of vendors, I'm sorry, a lot of venues require insurance, but that only covers their end of the spectrum,
right.
right? There's so many other people that are involved, photographers, videographers, makeup artists, hairstylists, florists, like the list goes on of the people that are involved. Anything could happen with those individuals as well. And if you have to come out of pocket an additional $3,000, $4,000, like it could hurt. It could hurt, especially if you have a tight budget for your wedding. If somebody falls off the face of the earth and you just can't get a hold of them and you have to find somebody new, it's not like you're going to get your money back from them and then pay
Right.
somebody else. You have to pay an additional $3,000 out of pocket for whoever it may be. So, I mean, I try to look at it from a cost perspective of, okay, you're looking to pay, let's say, let's use rough numbers, like $3,000 for a makeup artist to come in and do the bride's makeup and all of her bridesmaids. Well, what's your actual budget? And if they don't say double that, then I say, well, then you need to make sure that that's covered, because if anything happens to that individual, you're going to end up paying double. You're going to end up paying $6,000 for
Uh,
one makeup artist because the one just either went bankrupt or you weren't able to get a hold of her or she canceled last minute or whatever it may be. So, if people are saying, oh yeah, my budget for the wedding is $100,000 and they're only spending 50, okay, maybe wedding insurance isn't something that you really are going to prioritize. But if they're saying my budget's 50 and that's hard and I'm not spending a dollar more, then you need to protect that investment, because anything goes wrong, you're losing out on that $50,000.
yeah,
And there's
being in this business for as many years, I've been years, and Celia longer than myself, but you hear the horror stories. You hear
Mhm.
the I paid the videographer and then they disappeared. They simply
Yeah.
disappeared,
Hmm.
and they've done it to a couple of clients, or like you said, whomever, not picking on one vendor or another, but you do hear those stories. And of course, venues as well. I mean, something
Mhm.
happens, like the art factory just
Yep.
closed with lots of people's deposits.
That one is the worst case scenario. That one really threw a lot of brides into it caused
Yeah.
fear when I mean, it was helpful from my standpoint because it gave me something that was very real for them to lean on.
Right.
But there was a lot of brides and grooms that lost out on a lot.
Lot of money.
Yeah,
Yeah.
people were showing up the day of their wedding to the doors being locked
I
and they
know.
couldn't get in. There was
I
even a
know.
story of a bride and groom that came in the day before it got closed down, brought all of their stuff in
Hmm.
for the next day to set up or to whatever. And they closed on that night. No notice was necessary because they filed Chapter 11 properly. And when they went the next day, doors were locked, couldn't get their stuff, and they had to call the police department. They had to come and break in and get their belongings, and their wedding had to be canceled. It was a nightmare. So,
It's
like,
horrible.
And
yeah, the
I
worst
know.
case can happen.
and it could be a domino effect, like, so now your venue closed down or burnt down or whatever, but there's so many vendors that have deposits or payment in full if
Hmm.
it's close enough to your wedding day, and you're going to lose that money too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah,
Well,
I
we
think
we
it's
also we had a client. We had three clients, I think, that got caught up in that. And one of them had to move from here, which is 5 minutes from us, the art factory, to someplace way far down south. Now,
Hmm.
fortunately, we could put that into our schedule, but there's no, if you have to move from here to Cape May, there's no, your vendors may not be able to do that.
Yeah.
But I think along those lines too, I think it's good to mention too that some of these, some of the things that happen that cause vendors and venues to not be able to fulfill their obligations to people, sometimes it's not their fault.
Yeah.
The one I always think of in conjunction with the art factory is another venue that shall remain unnamed, but they literally they rent their building. It's on a dock. The dock, they came literally, I think, 3 or 4 days before they closed it because the dock was unsafe.
Yeah.
And this is no fault of the venue. I mean,
Hmm.
they're as much a victim as everybody else. I mean, fortunately, we managed to place our people that weekend, but they literally came in on a Thursday night to do their final tasting, and the waiter was like, "Oh, we're closing tonight." And they're like, "What? Give me
Yeah.
dessert now."
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, those are the worst case scenarios, right?
It really is.
What happens more often than not is actually vendors. Like I believe it's 30% of claims is actually against vendors. And the
Yeah,
reason because of that is that there's two things, right? You're trying like the wedding industry is very expensive. To have a wedding, like you said, is a massive investment.
it is. It's huge.
And a lot of people try to cut corners per se, or try to save money in certain areas. And the market is so saturated that there's so many people that are in the industry that aren't very structured, right? They don't
Right.
have legitimate businesses. It's kind of a side gig for them.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's not very sustainable. And people go out of business,
Right.
and that's where a lot of what I see ends up actually happening is it's either a photographer that just does it as a side gig, and it wasn't sustaining him, and it wasn't making him the money that he needed to, so he had to go get a full-time job, and now all of a sudden he can't do your wedding on a Thursday night that he had already agreed to, or whatever it
Right.
may be. um and his business goes out of bit like he goes out of business, and now all of a sudden you're out of photographer. So like that's more so where claims end up happening versus the nightmare situation where the doors are locked and you can't get in, and everything
Yeah.
has to be moved, everything has to be canceled.
Mhm.
But that's what I said, like there's so many moving parts, there's so many different things that could go wrong, and that's only just on the expense side. When you go into the liability side, oof,
Mm.
that's a whole nother ball game. And that's where I really try to make a big impact, because anything that could potentially happen, you have, like I said before, 200 people in a room, liquor's being served, everybody's partying, everybody's having a great time. One person gets into a car and hurts
Yeah.
somebody else, that liability could fall on the bride and groom.
Yeah.
And it
Absolutely.
costs $200 for $2 million worth of liability coverage. So it's almost like a no-brainer.
Yeah.
But that's where I try to really push people, where it's like, listen, I understand that you want to try to save some money, but I mean, you're talking,
Uh,
$200 to
yeah.
make sure you don't
Yeah.
end up in a
It's
lawsuit and bankrupt. Like it's a whole nother conversation.
right,
It is.
right.
It's true.
And you, David, being located in Brielle by the
Hmm.
beach,
Yeah.
you know that some of these beaches that are very popular, if you're going to have your wedding on on the beach in Asbury Park or a
Yep.
lot of Monmouth County, Long Branch, they require you to carry. It used to be $1 million. It might have gone up of liability insurance to have your wedding
Hmm.
on the beach, and you know. I know you can get a rider on your homeowners. Nobody wants to
Nobody wants to do that.
touch
No.
their homeowners. So I just
Yeah.
give them
It's
your
not worth
name
it.
and say,
Yeah.
you got to call, you got to get it. And it's worth it and it's not expensive. And
Yeah.
No.
then you're protected. And even if they don't require it, you should get it,
Yeah.
for
I
the
actually
reasons you
just
said.
I just had a situation in Asbury Park just this past week. There was somebody that was having a wedding on the beach and then had their reception at a different location. I think it was
Mhm.
maybe just like 10, 20 minutes away.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I think we got her $2 million with the liability. The entire wedding was covered, everything. And it came out to like $400 for the entire thing. And it
Yeah.
covered both ends of it. It covered the beach end with the liability, and then it also covered the venue end with the liquor liability and all that jazz, and covering all the vendors and the venue. So yeah, it's super cost effective.
It's,
Yeah.
when you really think about it, I mean, I know the national average cost of a wedding, according to the knot, I think is like 35 grand. And,
Hmm.
every time I see that, because it gets spit around in the media all the time, it's like, I think about that in New Jersey, that is the tip of the iceberg in a lot
Yep.
of cases.
Yep.
You're talking about, like, not even, people used to say, oh, it's like the down payment for a house. It's like maybe a quarter of a house at this point, and
Yeah.
when you think about how little, I think part of the issue is that people, they're afraid of looking into it, because nobody knows. Well, it's not unlike a lot of other things in the wedding industry. People have no idea what anything costs, which is why they're over budget from the get-go, because there's just an average cost that you read on a media site. Average means nothing in New Jersey.
Yeah.
That's, that's the lowest thing. That's like ZD at the ambulance corps versus the Venetian. The average has nothing to do with what you're going to do. And I think they're afraid of anything that has anything to do with weddings. But when you're talking about weddings that can sometimes reach over $100,000, you need to protect that. I think what's interesting, and you mentioned this to me when we spoke, is that people think that they don't have to worry about liquor liability if they're in a place where they're not supplying the liquor. And you brought up that really isn't the case. If you have a backyard barbecue, wedding, which they're great, and you bring in your own liquor and whatnot, and you have a canoe full of beer, you need liquor liability,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
As long as your name is attached to something and there's liquor involved, you could be the target.
Yeah,
That's it.
It's a little scary. I don't want to sound like we're like fear mongering here, but we're in a time of
being an adult, really.
Yeah.
Well, we're in a time of national financial insecurity at the moment. And, that is something that really people need to think about and figure out how to protect themselves. So after COVID, we had COVID was just so dramatic that none of us knew what to do next.
Yeah.
But, and a lot of my venues, I have to say, a lot of my venues treated their clients with such grace and such generosity that in itself is marketing, but none of us knew what to do next. But, at least if you have coverage for this, it's like after the party, that $200, that's one person doesn't show up at your wedding, and your $200 worth of insurance is covered.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. The funny thing, you mentioned COVID. So there's actually two main exclusions that are not covered and under any wedding insurance policy. One is COVID. That is one exclusion that, like, they cover sickness, right? And it's typically like something different as opposed to just COVID. And they also cover if any of the main parties, any main individuals of the party. So it's bride, groom, one up, one down, one over, bridesmaid, groomsmen, things like that. Anybody that's integral to the wedding itself. If they can't make it because they're in the hospital or they're sick or whatever, you can postpone the wedding and get coverage back, and then go reschedule your wedding. You can do that. And then the other one is voluntary cancellation.
That's a good one. I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, cold feet is not something that these carriers will cover.
Oh, come on, that's a disease.
That is non-refundable.
It's all in the way you phrase it.
Anybody.
Yeah. I've had bride and grooms ask me. I'm like, listen, if you're concerned about this not happening,
don't do it.
Yeah, just don't do it. Don't even worry about the insurance. Just worry about if you want to actually.
Yeah, really. It's time for some counseling. Okay.
Exactly. I'm a therapist to a degree, but not that far.
That is funny because most people think of insurance like going back to hurricane or superstorm Sandy, when venues just suddenly closed down and everything. And it's no fault of anybody's. It's just weather, natural disaster, weather related. And you being in the area, we got hit pretty bad here at the shore. So, and some of the venues, were closed down for quite a while,
Right.
And you guys do cover that though.
Yes, that is also a main part of the policy. So yeah, like I said, the main cancellations are weather and sickness. So if there's a mass weather storm that comes through, or a natural disaster or anything like that, that's all covered as well.
Yeah.
I think that the fact that you brought that up is really, I'm glad you did, Andrea, because I remember one of the hurricanes, which was the hurricane that destroyed Windows on the Water? Was that Sandy or is that Irene? Yeah.
I believe that was Sandy, because the shore got hit a lot harder with Sandy. I believe.
Yeah.
We had a number of people who, at that point, you're looking at the state of emergency being declared. Probably half of your guests are here already, and now you can't do anything.
Hmm.
you're not allowed to do anything.
Yep.
Fortunately, I was in Pennsylvania that weekend, so
Oh
yeah,
wow.
fortunate. It's the only time I ever feel fortunate to be in
Be in
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Because not because I hate Pennsylvania, just it was not in the hurricane zone. But
Yeah.
we had 3 or 4 of them canceled that weekend, and you really you really just don't have any recourse. I mean, if you have 3 feet of snow and we can't get there and nobody can get there, then what do you do? Do you this may not be something that you discuss with people, but do you talk to them about what their obligations are with their contracts to various people, like dresses not coming in on time and venues being closed because of states of emergency? Is that something you get into?
Yeah, no, we definitely speak about that briefly. It's not a big topic that I dive into, but I definitely let them know that could be a potential occurrence where things could, be covered. Um, like one of the coverages that's in the policy is special attire. So if a dress
Ah.
gets
Oh,
damaged,
cool.
yeah, if a dress gets damaged or if a dress doesn't show up or if the vendor that is doing your dress goes out of business, because I've had situations where doors
Yeah.
were locked when they went to go pick up their
Yes.
dresses.
Oh, yeah.
That's all covered as well. Um, and then like from the natural disaster perspective, like you think of a lot of people just think of just the time frame that it's happening, right? Whereas you can't do anything in that area for, let's say, a week. But nobody talks about the damages that could potentially happen to a venue because of that would close them down for an additional 2, 3 weeks after that, right?
Right.
So let's say there's a massive storm and there's a state of emergency and no one's allowed to open their doors for 7 days. Well, that storm passes and turns out a tree fell into the venue, and now there's a giant hole in the
Right.
the venue hall that you were going to have your wedding at. They need time to repair that. That's also something that's covered in there as
Mm,
well. Um,
interesting.
and like I mentioned that venues make you get insurance now. That only covers their portion, right? So they're like, hey,
Yeah.
sorry, we can't do the wedding on the day that we planned on doing it. Here's your money back, but that doesn't cover everybody else. That doesn't cover the
Yeah.
photographers, videographers, all the other people that are involved in the situation.
That's a very good point.
Let me ask you, David, do you recommend getting additional insurance, even if, let's say, your DJ or whomever brings sparklers and devices like that, or you've hired, this is a big one. This sounds funny, but like the petting zoo, like the llamas, that's a big
Yep.
thing. Celia has so many pictures of her with
I'm
llamas
back.
because there's a venue by her that has llamas near it, and
I'm back.
people
I
bring
love that
them
you
in
asked
and
that.
stuff.
Oh,
So if they have like the petting zoos, the sparklers, or there's a couple of venues that have the fire pits where they make a bonfire and end the night with the s'mores and stuff. So even though these vendors must have their own insurance on it, do you think the couple should get additional insurance in case one of their guests get hurt?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that. So there is a little section that's in the policy, or when you're actually quoting somebody out, that asks, is there going to be fireworks? Is there going to be pyrotechnics? Is there going to be sparklers, cold or hot? Exotic animals? If you answer yes to any of those, they will not write the policy.
okay.
Okay.
We need to mention in the exotic animal area of life.
Oh, we did do the falcon.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm back. I don't. I think my exotic animal pulled my microphone out. I think that was the problem
Okay.
there. But we can't go on without mentioning. You know what, Andrea? You
Yeah,
know.
the falcon. I did a wedding
There you
where
go.
the falcon they brought in the rings. Yeah. But
Oh,
they must,
wow.
yeah, they did. So you won't just do an exclusion, they won't write
They
a
won't write it
policy.
at all.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
yeah, I
can't
get it.
kind of blame them. Although
Mhm.
the alpacas come to cocktail hour. They're really very cute.
I don't know where that's the thing is that it seems like there might be a gray area with what exactly an exotic animal is because
Huh.
alpacas could be considered domesticated, right? And
Yeah.
Yeah.
so could falcons. I mean, if you're bringing in an elephant, which I've had questions about before, that's a
I'm sure
clear
the
no.
Indian weddings, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
of
had I
course.
had a
Celia
couple
did
that
one
was
once.
their wedding was going to be so extravagant. And they're like, hey, we want our husband to walk in, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, yeah, no, sorry. That's not happening here. I can't, if you guys are planning on doing that, I hope that it goes well, but unfortunately, I can't help you from
Yeah,
that
you should
perspective.
go with the horse. But
Yeah.
you bring up an interesting point. I wonder because we have so many dogs at our weddings now. Is that like an
Yes.
issue?
Not the dog so much because I wouldn't consider dogs an exotic animal.
Well, you haven't
Yeah.
met my
Um,
dog.
what was that?
I said you haven't met my dog or Andrea's dogs.
Yeah, so that's the weird part, right? Like there's a gray area. And typically
Yeah.
what I'll do is I'll call the carriers and I'll just kind of play dumb and be like, hey, there's this one couple that might do this, blah, blah, and I'll see what they say.
It's a little
Um,
dog. It's a tiny little dog.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
only
yeah.
it doesn't even bark. It's
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's only 180 pounds. And,
right. Oh my
Well,
gosh.
I can see, I know sometimes people always want to do like those sky lanterns. They're not even allowed in New
No, we can't even
Jersey.
do
They're
that
just going to
anymore.
catch somebody's
yeah.
house on fire,
Pretty much. It's hard
No.
because, these brides and grooms, they want to have these picturesque weddings that they
Mm.
see, in movies and stuff. And I love that they have the vision, but sometimes it's just
Not.
like practically it just doesn't work
Yeah,
because
yeah.
there's
I
so many
like that.
rules and stuff that you can and can't do.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, for folks wanting to get your insurance, we will put a link to the website
Awesome.
on our social media and also on Spotify and Apple podcasts. So couples can go right to the website and then they can get a quote and they can get coverage right from the website, right? They can certainly call you with questions, but if they fill this out, it's really quite easy, correct?
We actually don't do any quotes through our website. We
Oh,
don't do that from any perspective, not
Okay.
the wedding insurance, home insurance, car insurance, commercial. We have a very hands-on approach at our firm. I feel like a lot of insurance agencies, they're kind of quote shops, and we refuse to do that, mainly because there's one, no relationship between us and the client, and
Yeah.
two, there's still that I guess that fog of what exactly are they buying, right?
right.
I
Yeah.
like to sit down with my couples and with my clients, and I actually jump on Zoom with them, and I'll go line by line with them with the policies that I find,
That's
and I'll
great.
have them have a clear understanding of what their responsibilities are, what coverages they have, what exclusions there are, what endorsements are in there, all kinds of different stuff, so they have a full understanding of
That's
what's
great.
going on. Because honestly, it works two ways, right? Like the client is more aware of what's happening. They have a clear picture of what's going on. I get to build a relationship with them,
Mhm.
and my firm is a lot more than just insurance. So it allows us to become a little bit more of a liaison for them when it comes to whatever they have going on, because my network goes far beyond just insurance. I have so many different professionals that I work with, and I want my clients to come to me whenever they need anything because
Yeah.
I want to make sure they're taken care properly, no matter what it is. If they're getting renovations done in their house, or if they need power washing done in their house, or if they're looking to buy a suit, I have a guy for that. I mean, my friends and family make fun of me because they're like, "Oh, you're the guy that has everything." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, I have a guy for everything."
Got a guy for everything.
But I
That's
like to be
amazing.
that broker of my own network and be able to kind of help people out and point them in the right direction. So when we have those conversations, it opens the door for me to be able to build that relationship with them. That I'm more than just an insurance agent for them. I'm more of like a consultant in a way, and that's honestly how I want my career to go. I want to be known more as a consultant than I am just an insurance agent.
Okay. So through the website, they can call you directly,
hmm
or fill out the contact form.
Yeah, absolutely. They could reach out to us directly. Typically, you'll get one of our assistants. They'll pick up the phone call, and they'll always just let me know, and then I'll be able to jump on a call with them. We'll have somebody answer you immediately, and then I'll get back to you within a few hours, if not sooner.
Sounds great. Sounds
Sounds
hmm
good
great.
to me. Sounds good. Great. Great.
Absolutely.
Oh, David, it was wonderful to have you. I'm glad we met. And a big shout out to bride lawyer and groom lawyer for putting a little event together that had some just
Yeah,
really terrific pros. And
absolutely.
it was really nice to meet you. And we had
You as
talked
well.
about this, honestly. Andre and I had talked about this. It's like because I people talk to me about this, not all the time, but on a regular basis. And if we knew somebody that could really help them in a clear way, a clear, non-frightening, concise way, which happens to be you, I think that really benefits everybody. So it was really
I love
great to
that.
meet you.
Yeah.
Yes, it's very niche. Not too many people are doing what I'm
No, but that's
doing.
good. That's good.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ladies. I appreciate you.
Okay.
And I hope to speak to you both very soon.
Yeah,
Okay.
have a great day. Thanks so much.
You as well.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
As always, thank you for tuning in to New Jersey Wedding Podcast. We hope this conversation helped shine a light on the importance of protecting your big day. Whether it's against unexpected weather or a last-minute venue closure or perhaps town permit requirements, you can learn more or request a quote at Gyumolcs Insurance. We will include that link in the show notes. So don't forget to like and subscribe or share this podcast with a friend who's engaged. And until next time, wishing you happy wedding planning and a beautiful wedding day. This podcast is brought to you by New Jersey wedding officiant Andrea Pertel, owner of For This Joyous Occasion Officiating Services.
And Celia Milton, owner of NJ Vows Now, also New Jersey wedding officiating services. We're up in North Jersey, and Andrea is down in Central and South Jersey. So together we cover the whole state, don't we?
Yes, yes.